when you were growing up? When you were growing up, were you a fan of wrestling?
I was. I loved it. I grew up in Illinois, and the AWA was really big. I watched guys like Nick Bockwinkel and Dick the Bruiser and the Crusher, and we'd watch it on TV every weekend. And I was always a wrestling fan growing up, and it was big enough in the weight room where it just seemed like the natural thing to do. You know, that's when I started to really become interested in training and doing it.
Were you playing other sports and stuff, or?
I never played football. The high school had 380 students in the entire high school, so we didn't have a football team. Everybody always asked, well, I know you played football. I never got to play football. I played basketball in college at Tennessee Temple University in Chattanooga.
What made you think about wrestling?
It was one of those things where it hit me one day. I was watching World Championship Wrestling, and they were talking about going to the power plant. One of the restrictions was that, you know, they didn't want anybody that was older than 30 years old. All right. And so, you know, I'm coming up on 30 years old, and I'm like, you know what the heck, I'm going to try it. I trained at the Wahoo McDaniel School of Pro Wrestling. I trained with Chief Jay Eagle. That's how I broke into the wrestling business. I started with American Pro Wrestling, just doing some small shows. I was noticed by NWA Wildside, NWA Georgia, Bill Behrens and Steve Martin. I started doing shows over there. It wasn't long, and I won the NWA Georgia Championship. I was the NWA Georgia champion for 18 months, which at the time was longer than anybody had ever held that belt. So I was pretty proud of that. After I won the NWA Georgia belt, some opportunities opened up. We were on America One Network around the country. I won the NWA National Belt, and then I really got to travel around all over the country and wrestle in a lot of different territories for the NWA. You know, a lot of big name guys. That's kind of how I was asked to start wrestling with WCW and WWF.
Was it fun? Did you have a good? Was it all? I know it was a lot of work. People don't realize how much work goes into getting ready for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. You always get the question: is it fake? Is it fake? I answer with the same thing. It is entertainment. There's no question, but it's very, very physical. You talk about going even 3 minutes, you know, with another 300+ pound guy, picking each other up, running ropes, and then, you know, it's very exhausting, very physical. It's demanding, but it is a lot of fun, you know, and being able to travel and meet all these guys that you've watched and idolized for years, the Ric Flairs and Hulk Hogans, and, you know, being in the same dressing room with them. I mean, you know, it was a lot of fun.
Who was your favorite person you ever wrestled against? What was the most fun?
I would probably say AJ Styles. And I actually did a commercial with AJ Styles one time for a used car dealership. We wrestled before. AJ is such a phenomenal talent. I mean, that guy has got more talent in his pinky than most guys have.
And you're talking about the challenge physically. Did you ever get hurt?
Yes. I never got seriously hurt, but honestly, I probably had more concussions than I could count and just didn't realize it at the time. You get your head slammed into ring posts and into, you know, beat over the head with chairs and so forth. And thank the Lord, I never got seriously injured. Just a lot of aches and pains.
Remind people how hard it was to train and how strong you got when you were at your peak.
When I wrestled, of course, I had hair down to here. I was about 360 pounds, 365, something like that. I was bench pressing 500 pounds and, you know, squatting 700 pounds and, you know, lifting a lot of weight. And you have to. You've got to be, you know, Steve Martin always told me, you know, wrestling is about being larger than life. You know, so, I mean, the bigger and stronger and freakier you are, the more your gimmick is going to sell. We spent countless hours and hours in the weight room working out. And one thing I can say, and Bill Behrens, you know, he's a legend in the sport of wrestling, especially in independence, but he said I worked out harder than anybody he had ever seen. And that's one thing that I can say. There are guys I know that had a lot more talent than I did, but I don't think anybody worked harder than I did. That's kind of how I made up for it.
Remind people what your wrestling name was and how you came up with that.
My wrestling name was Stone Mountain, and literally Chief Jay Eagle came up with that for me. he looked at me and, said, "You're a mountain of a man, aren't you?" And yeah, I guess so. And so he gave me the name Stone Mountain, and I just kind of went with it from there.
And how long did you wrestle total?
About 5 years. I started around 97, 98 and wrestled till 2003 when I got into law enforcement.
And why did you make that transition?
Well, I had a developmental contract offered to me from WCW, and that was pending a sale. They were in the midst of selling out to one of the wireless communications companies. That sale fell through. When it did, they went out of business. WWF, I had done a couple of shows with them. They weren't really interested in signing me. So when WCW went out of business, you go from wrestling in the Georgia Dome and the Charlotte Coliseum and, places like that, going back to National Guard armories and middle school gyms, and listen, nothing against it, because there is some phenomenal wrestling in the independent circuits that you can really get a lot of amazing talent, but it's just something I didn't want to start over. I had a family, and law enforcement was another thing that I had always had a heart for, to help people who couldn't help themselves, to use my size, my stature to be able to help people.
How do the people on your beat respond when they see you pull up and get out of the car? I mean, what kind of responses do you get from like both from the guilty and from kids?
Yeah. Usual reaction, and I just got it this morning, is, "Oh my gosh, you are freaking huge." And my response is yes, I'm freakishly large, but I'm harmless. I appreciate the fact, and honestly, my size has probably kept me out of a lot of fights over the years, which is a good thing. Never ever want to try to intimidate anybody but at the same time, if my size and stature can kind of keep things at a calmer level, it's a good thing. Yeah, the kids, they'll kind of stand there and look straight up, and so I'll usually kneel down to them, kind of pat them on the back. "Hey, how you doing? It's okay. I'm not going to eat you." I usually get the same thing from everybody. It's kind of a look of shock, when I get out of the car.
How big are you, Jon?
I'm 6'7" and about 340, 345.
What goals do you have left? You've been a wrestler, you're a law enforcement officer now. What else do you want to do in this field or whatever else?
Honestly, the position I'm at now is exactly where I want to be. I'm staff sergeant now in the Judicial Services Division. We've got the Warrants Division, the Civil Division, the Transport Division. It was always my goal to move up in rank and be as successful as I could be here at the Sheriff's Office. So I can honestly say, and this may sound corny, but I'm right where I want to be. I'm kind of living the dream, so to speak. I got an amazing family. I work for an amazing agency. We have come so far, and Sheriff McBride has done great things, and I'm exactly where I want to be. I am in a movie that's out right now, too.
Oh, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
All right, wait. So you're in a movie that's out right now. Tell me about that.
Yes, yeah. I got an opportunity 3 years ago. My son-in-law was in a couple of episodes of The Walking Dead as an extra. This company, Extras Casting Atlanta, they have openings and auditions and so forth, for extras every so often. The Mel Gibson movie Boss Level with Frank Grillo and Naomi Watts, and they were looking for somebody who was extremely large and muscular, and they described me down to the T. So I said, "What the heck?" I sent them an email with some pictures. They emailed me back the same day and said, "Come to Atlanta in 3 days, and we're going to fit you and measure you for a costume." So I got an extra part as a security guard in the movie Boss Level. It was one of those bucket list things. It was a lot of fun. It's something I was never able to do.
But you're going to stay in law enforcement. You're not going to Hollywood.
No, definitely staying in law enforcement. Yes, sir.
Well, I tell you, for once, we're seeing something maybe even because they're actually tagging.